Book TV interviewed former MTV VJ Kennedy about her memoir, The Kennedy Chronicles. The interview was recorded at Planet Hollywood Resort and Casino in Las Vegas at Freedom Fest 2013. It's about 20 minutes.
Well, for those of a certain age, on our screen now is a familiar face, and this is Kennedy.
Hi, Peter.
Hello, MTV VJ, erstwhile. Kennedy, what's your history? And first of all, what's your real full name?
Lisa Kennedy Montgomery. Kennedy is my middle name. Lisa Kennedy Montgomery was too long for the radio, where I started in Los Angeles in 1991. So we shortened it to Kennedy. I was actually the Virgin Kennedy. That was my name on air at a big alternative radio station in K-Rock.
How did you get to MTV?
My boss, who was, oh, look at that. See, a lot of people have given me a hard time for being naked on a horse. I'm not naked on a horse, that's a donkey, okay? So back off, people. It totally changes the context. My boss at the radio station, who hired me when I was an intern to be a DJ, went to MTV to be the senior vice president of programming.
That's Andy Schoen?
Andy Schoen, yes, exactly. And at the time, they were having a changing of the guard. They were changing the look of MTV. They wanted some new VJs, and I was a known quantity to him. Unfortunately, I was at the right place at the right time, and he was adventurous and got Judy McGrath to sign off on it, so I became a VJ in 1992.
How did that change your life?
I moved to New York, and I didn't know what to expect. I remember the night before I left for New York, I was shopping at a grocery store in LA, and I was like, am I going to be mobbed the next time I'm at a grocery store? So I assumed it would be a light switch of its own, and hordes of people would follow me screaming. But that didn't happen. No, it took a long time to be recognized, and it was interesting and strange and kind of lonely. I was far away from my family in Oregon, but at the same time, I knew this great adventure had begun, and so I made a personal challenge to myself that no matter what happened, I was going to maximize every moment and take advantage of every interview and every experience.
Were you a conservative at that time?
I was a self-identified conservative at that time because I didn't know what a libertarian was. And in fact, it was one of my coworkers, Kurt Loder, who introduced me to libertarianism. I had heard the term and knew that it was something with a great mystique that was strange and little understood within politics, but I wasn't sure that I was a libertarian, so I identified as a conservative Republican.
Were you out?
I was not out at first, and I was very careful not to offend people because I went through a 13-week trial period when I first got to MTV, and I didn't want to get fired. I didn't know how easily I could be dismissed. So one of the things I tried to do is keep my politics to myself, but I also enjoyed a little political discourse now and again, and if I heard someone talking who sounded politically uninformed or underinformed, I like to jump in and correct course.
Why did you keep your politics private?
I kept my politics private because MTV was known for being pretty leftist. I mean, it was New York in 1992. A lot of our bosses were baby boomers. I came in the middle of the Choose or Lose campaign, the first Choose or Lose campaign, and the network had a lot of access to Bill Clinton. I'm not saying they were pushing Bill Clinton, but there certainly were a lot of people excited about the idea of a Clinton presidency. And, they did not try to hide their politics. So, at some point, I was outed, eventually by Lloyd Grove of the Washington Post.
And what happened then? Were you allowed to talk politics on the air?
I wasn't encouraged to talk about politics on the air because I wasn't the host of a political show. I also wasn't encouraged to talk about volleyball or, auto repair. They wanted me to talk about the music, but I did have a lot of interviews with musicians who considered themselves to be very political, and occasionally we would get in some heated discussions, including with Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. And, he has an ideology which is very confining, and in his world, if you don't agree with him, you are the enemy. There's very little room for actual free thought, and I always found that to be very hypocritical, and when I came across people like that, I would call them on it. And, Tom and I got into it on the air, got into it with Marilyn Manson and other artists, mostly trying to figure out the limits of their freedom, because you would assume that rock stars live this free and easy lifestyle when in fact their views are really confined, more confining than any other group of people that I had come across at that point in my career.
Kennedy, how would you describe the political power of MTV during the 90s when you were on?
I think MTV was incredibly powerful because they realized that, they could tap into a generation of future voters. And also, this is a time when you're in your teens and late teens and early 20s where you're most passionate about things in your life. And they realized that if you could turn that passion to politics, it would be a really incredible force. Now, regardless if I agreed or disagreed with the politics of the people who served over me as my bosses, I like the fact that they wanted to engage people. I like the fact that they wanted people to express and learn about their own political leanings and feelings. And then every once in a while I'd jump in there and get a little bloody and mix it up with them. But I always thought that was for the benefit of all, because when you challenge one another, when you really learn it is what you believe and why you believe it, it'll make you a better person for it, not just politically, but all around.
You call the MTV Choose or Lose campaign Choose Clinton and Lose George Bush.
Yeah, that's really what it felt like. I mean, they were pretty excited to get rid of 12 years of Reagan Bush, and and a lot of people in the country felt that way. You have to realize in 1992, it was still economically pretty depressed. And people, much as they did in 2008, they wanted optimism. They wanted to turn the page. They wanted to see the country go in a different direction. And here was someone who represented the ideology of most baby boomers. And since you had baby boomers running MTV, it seemed very natural that they would get most excited and caught up in the conflagration.
In the Kennedy Chronicles, you write, "The entire time at MTV, I was drug, alcohol, and smoke-free, a vegetarian, and a virgin." Was that rare?
To have all of those things in the same person, yeah, I think that was pretty rare. And some people, like punk rockers, would call that straight edge. And there's an entire stream within the punk rock community that feel like being in total control of your body is the wisest thing you can do. And I did not have that sort of intention or philosophy or foresight. It just so happened that, I had been sober. I didn't find that drugs and alcohol did anything for me. I actually worried for my job that I would do something impulsive and stupid if I were under the influence, because I did enough crazy things without drugs. Like, I honestly didn't need them. And it was much more fun to be able to document things from my friends who got sloshed the night before the next morning and tell them what jackasses they had been.
But you also talk about, as you say, the mounds of cocaine that were available.
That's a joke. No,
Was that a joke?
Yes, I joked that there were plastic surgeons on call and mountains of cocaine at the breakfast buffet. We didn't have a breakfast buffet at MTV. It was basic cable. No one was going to foot the bill for mountains of cocaine. But no, that was a joke to illustrate, what people might think would be the privilege and access for MTV VJs.
Kennedy, what happened when Bill Clinton and Al Gore came to visit the MTV studios?
I will never know what happened when Al Gore and Bill Clinton, what happened at the studios, because I wasn't allowed there. I mean, literally, they would find the farthest place for me to travel, and they would put me in a car and they would take me there. And usually it was in a work environment with camera crews, so it's not like I had a minder taking me to the zoo, because if I were at the zoo, I would have snuck onto a train and gone right back to the studio and seen if I could cause a little trouble. So they would always find a remote shoot for me whenever someone in real power was visiting the studio.
Why?
I think they were worried I would say something to them like I did to Rod Stewart, and not only would I embarrass the network, but I could get in trouble with the government.
You have a chapter in here. I'm going to show it to our audience. What is this chapter about?
That chapter is about the 1993 MTV inaugural ball, because the president had the great fortune of attending many cotillions that night, and many of them were very nice.
Well,
it's a play on words.
Right, but what's go ahead and explain the chapter a little deeper.
So MTV was thrilled and giddy to be able to finally throw this
the rock
big
and roll
coming out. Yeah, it was a rock and roll presidency. It was a rock and roll inaugural ball, and this was the greatest concentration of power that I had ever seen. Whether it was politicians, actors, musicians, in that moment, the biggest people on earth were all at the MTV inaugural ball. And if you were a lobbyist, if you were a staffer, you would have punched a homeless person in the mouth in order to get a ticket to that event.
And why were you allowed to go?
I was allowed to go because I was a VJ. I was one of the on-air people. So Bill Bellamy, who was also a new VJ at the time, he and I were, you know, we were kind of the boobies. Like, we were the people they barely let into the event. And I went in there with a great deal of sadness because I felt that the country was swirling the toilet of socialism and we were going down the tubes.
And when Bill Clinton and Al Gore went on stage, you write in the Kennedy Chronicles that the Grand Old Party boys and I instinctively started chanting "Nixon now, Nixon now."
Yes. We became nostalgic for the Nixon presidency because we figured it couldn't get much worse. And there were a bunch of bumper stickers kind of circulating in 1992. He's tan, he's rested, he's ready, Nixon now. Because the former president was still alive at that point. And we thought, you know, how ironic.
Kennedy, why are you here at Freedom Fest, the libertarian grouping?
I'm here at Freedom Fest as a very proud contributor to Reason TV. I've been working with Reason TV for a year and a half, and I love it. I love the pieces that I do with them. There's a ton of creativity. There's a solid message, and I don't think libertarians should allow anyone else to define them. Being a libertarian means many different things to many people, and whatever that means, like, you should be the one to define that for yourself. Freedom Fest is great because it brings so many different types of people together who are questioning, you know, what is the function of government? Should we be on the gold standard? And, you know, a lot of gold here. A lot of precious metals, which, you know, I like that. So I'm wearing it right now.
Have your politics changed over the years?
I would say my politics have not changed drastically, but how I feel about certain issues has certainly evolved. And it was when I moved to Seattle, when I left MTV, that I really found and refined my voice as a libertarian. Because when I was at MTV, Kurt Loder said to me, you know, you're really a libertarian, and he gave me Ayn Rand's objectivist epistemology. And it sort of sharpened my lens. And I had the great fortune of doing talk radio in Seattle, which is a very political town. People think it's very leftist, but, you know, if you get outside Seattle, you find people that are more conservative and people who don't even know they're libertarians. And that's when I really started engaging in the discussion and bringing people to the light, like letting people realize for themselves that their beliefs are really about limited government, letting people do what they do best on their own. People are the best barometer for their own choices and actions. I've always felt that way, but now I think I just refine how I feel more about particular issues, and being in talk radio, writing, working for Reason, it's all sort of helped that.
What do you think about the current political situation in America?
I think the current political situation in America is very interesting. It's ripe for a libertarian-leaning person or group of people to really show them how you do it when you limit government and how people's lives can be better. Because now we are seeing in so many ways, in ways that people would not have imagined 4 or 5 years ago, that government can actually be not only a destructive force, but a terrifying force. If you stop and think about it, when conspiracy theorists start sounding rational, you know the government's in trouble.
Kennedy, you have another chapter in here, Rudy Can Fail. Is this about Mayor Giuliani?
Yes, that is about Mayor Giuliani.
And what is this chapter about?
That chapter is about Mayor Giuliani in his young tenure in New York City. In 1994, really tried to bring the Video Music Awards back to New York City. For the last few years, they had been in Los Angeles. And I had actually attended the last 3 Video Music Awards at Universal, where MTV was going to build their headquarters. They were going to take it out of Times Square. And the mayor stepped in and said, no, we'll roll out the red carpet for you. And MTV took on the challenge. And for the first year, they said, you know what? We're going to let some of our VJs really be a part of the show. We're going to let you guys present the awards. We'll let you walk the red carpet. We will treat you like stars. This is a new era. I was so excited for it. It was my 22nd birthday. And so one of the very first things I did on camera, I was with Bill Bellamy and the mayor of New York City. And Rudy Giuliani was so excited for this moment. And Bill and I were kind of nervous. We were about to go on live TV and solicit calls for the Viewer's Choice Award. It was the biggest award of the night. And then Bill and I were going to present that later on. And as we're standing there, Roseanne, who was the host that year, the 94 VMAs, she started kind of making fun of me. And she called me out as a Republican, and she said that she had seen me backstage doing something with my mouth to Rush Limbaugh, and I had never met Rush Limbaugh, so there was no way. And the crowd started booing, and it freaked me out. So when Bill and the mayor and I came on, they were booing very loudly, and I thought to myself, like, I have to get them back. I have to do something. I'm standing here with the mayor, and so I did that thing with my mouth on the microphone that she said I had done with Rush Limbaugh, and the crowd started laughing. And I was like, oh, this is really great. This is fantastic. But what didn't occur to my brain in that 15 seconds of impulsivity was this could have severe ramifications, not only for me and my job, but for MTV and their relationship with New York City. So Judy McGrath, the president of MTV, Tom Freston, the CEO of MTV Networks, and Sumner Redstone, the owner of Viacom, are all watching this, and Sumner's going, who is this Kennedy? Who is this person? Why is she working? I mean, he literally wanted me fired that second. Didn't want to wait to the end of the show. And the fact that I kept my job for 3 more years is a miracle beyond my own limited understanding.
What do you think of MTV's role in American society? Has it been positive?
I think by and large, I certainly think that our era at MTV was very positive, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, because every generation has their own era. You know, it's like youth culture has its time in the sun, and mine happened to be in the 90s, and it was so much fun, and it was so different, and it's such a great contrast with the way media is now. And that's one of the reasons that, you know, so many people come up to me, they miss being able to see music on TV. They felt that there was a purity about it, and an artistry even that we took for granted that you just don't see anymore, that women were portrayed differently, and I wanted to explore some of those things in a book that's a fun read that you can take to the beach, and, you know, you can have your policy books and you can have your serious biographies, and that's heavy reading for nighttime, so you dream about smart things, and then when you're at the beach with the kids, throw this in your bag and whip right through it and live in a time that will always remain pristine for you. And I just want to take people back and experience that moment again, because everyone knows the names, they remember the experiences, they remember the time, and now they'll get it in some insane detail.
Kennedy, what are you doing now?
Now I am a correspondent for John Stossel on the Stossel Show on Fox Business Network. I'm a contributor for Reason TV, and I shoot pieces in DC and New York and LA for Reason. And I also host a morning show on 98.7 in LA. It's an alternative music show, and so I interview bands, and I also get to see young up-and-coming bands and see how they fight to get attention and to break through in a very crowded landscape, which is still totally possible. But at the same time, I talk to a lot of the established bands who've been around for 20 years, bands like Linkin Park and No Doubt and, you know, Soundgarden, and talk to them and see from their point of view how it's changed and how they have to struggle to break through, even though they've got a catalog of hits spanning 20 years or more.
Do you think your politics have limited your opportunities in your chosen field?
I think there is a limiting factor to that, but I can't be obsessed about that. I have to be true to what I believe. You know, I've obviously grown up. I have a wonderful husband and 2 beautiful girls.
Who's your husband?
His name's Dave Lee. He's a retired snowboarder. He owns a snowboard company. Actually has a manufacturing plant, a factory in Southern California. So he makes snowboards, and it's funny to hear my girls talk about their dad going to the factory because people think they're kidding, and it's not a farce. He's really there grinding boards every day. He's a pretty amazing person. So, you know, they are the thrust of my life. They are the center of my life. And I want my girls to know that you can be true to who you are. You know, you can speak in your own voice and still have a good life. Will people try and paint you with their own brush? They certainly will. They always will. But you can't focus on that.
Do you get stopped in grocery stores today?
I do. It's funny, I get stopped for a variety of reasons. A lot of people see me on Stossel, and you know, they love John Stossel, they love his message. He's a really pure libertarian, he's a great person, and he's a wonderful mentor. So I get stopped for that a lot, and that's an older crowd, college age students a lot of times see me on the Reason videos, and then there are people who are my age who remember me from MTV, and those are the people I have the longest conversations with, talking about the good old days, and I always tell them, like, I just wrote about that. So it's pretty fun.
Are there closet conservatives in Hollywood?
There are definitely closet conservatives in Hollywood, and they actually have well-organized meetings. And, you know, they get together, they talk about ideas. Sometimes they include libertarians, sometimes they get frustrated by libertarians. I think libertarians are sellouts. who are just people pleasers trying to make liberals happy. But we all know that libertarians are politically the most consistent group around.
And we've been talking here on Book TV with Kennedy, Lisa Kennedy Montgomery, full name, The Kennedy Chronicles, the golden age of MTV through rose-colored glasses. Here's the cover. This is Book TV on C-SPAN 2.